Sorry for being a couple minutes late.
No problem.
No worries. Okay. So I see everyone except for April who sent an email that she might be a few minutes late, but she'll definitely be joining. So I'm gonna call the Finance Committee to order at 6:34. Okay, so in addition to FY25 budget work that we need to do tonight, we have two items that were not anticipated when the meeting was posted. One, Ryan is here to discuss a potential shortfall in the tax title budget for this year and may require a FinCom reserve. And Lenny is also here to talk about the fire department training wages line, which is also been depleted. So Lenny, if you don't mind, I'm going to just take Ryan first and then we'll jump to you. Is that okay? All right. All right. Hi, Ryan. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Good. Good.
Good.
So
I appreciate everyone squeezing me in here to your
Yeah, of course.
what I'm sure is a very busy time for you.
Yeah. So talk to us. Tell us what you're facing and what the request is.
Yeah, so our tax title activity this year has been a little bit busier than we normally have. There was a basically a filing error that took place between the collector treasurer's office and the registry of deeds, and our tax title attorney has helped spend some time cleaning that up and remedying it. And as a result, it's taken up more time than we thought in more of our expense line that we had initially planned on expending. Also, we've had a lot more activity taking place. We've been more aggressive in trying to bring in some funds from this tax title balance that we have, which also has resulted in somewhat of a shortfall. At the moment, the account is not overexpended. We have a balance of around $800 in there. But based on the time that we have left in the work that we're doing and kind of where we're at in a process on a couple things, we're looking at needing another $3,000 to get us through the rest of this fiscal year. I will preface that with some of the work we're doing. For example, I have a check that's going to the bank this coming Monday for $9,000 as to clean up a tax title account, and that's a direct result of this tax title line paying the attorney to work with us and help get some money brought in. So the benefit of this line is that its purpose truly is to help bring in money to the town that is owed to us.
Right. Okay, so we've got a request for $3,000 to replenish that line. Any questions from the committee? All right, I don't see any hands. Is anyone inclined to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. We transfer $3,000 from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund to the tax title line for $3,000. If I didn't say that already.
Okay, great. Thanks, George. Made the motion. I think Bob was the first second. All right, any other discussion? None? All right, George, you wanna?
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves, aye.
Oh, Jim, I think you're muted, but I could kind of read your lips. Yeah. Jim, you want to give us a thumbs up?
Yeah. Hemingway, aye. Sorry about that.
No problem. Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye. Stein, aye.
Walton, aye.
All right, so Ryan, that should be all set. I'm gonna just for the Becky, can you give me sharing privileges, and
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'm gonna pull up the current FinCom reserve balance. Okay. So, George, keep me honest here. Does this look up to date? I'm not missing anything, right?
Yeah, no, that's correct. It's
Okay.
gonna go to 52,094. That's what I have.
Tax title. Is this line called tax title expense? Is that
Yes.
okay? Great. And that's 3,000. Okay. Yeah. So all right. So we have a balance of $52,094. Okay. Ryan, any other questions for us, or you're all set?
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate everyone very much. I will not make, I've never in all of my career ever had an account get to this level. So I'm happy that it's to help bring in some more money to the town. I appreciate everyone very much.
Okay. All right.
Take care.
Thanks. Take care. Okay. All right. So why don't we talk to Lenny? Lenny, I know there's been a little bit of back and forth kind of behind the scenes through Becky about your training wages line. Is that what we're
Yes,
talking about? Yeah.
yes.
Can you give us the background and tell us where we are at?
Well, right now we have $1,537 left on the training budget. We got 4 pay periods left to go.
Mhm.
I got fire department trains every Thursday night between 3 and 3.5 hours, and we have 9 firefighters on the payroll. So as right now, we still need 3 firefighters that have to take first responder class, which is roughly 30 hours per each firefighter. So that's a total of 90 hours.
That's
All right.
separate from the weekly Thursday training.
They're going to have to do that outside the weekly Thursday training.
Got it. All right.
But that still has to come out of the training budget.
Right.
The 2024 training budget is $18,043. So if you do the math, 50 Thursday drills at 3.5 hours long with 9 firefighters at $21 an hour is 33,000. So when everybody shows up to drill, I can make it if only half the people show up to training.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I'm seeing it. This doesn't cover if we get additional firefighters to join, additional training through the Mass Fire Academy, or mandatory training like first responder or CPR training. So right now we have 4 pay periods left in the fiscal year, and each period costs on average $1,848. So I'm asking for additional $6,000 to cover the rest of the fiscal year. I know Becky talked to you guys last week. My back was hurting a lot, so I'm sorry I missed the meeting. I'm not exactly sure what she talked to you guys about, but possibly taking money out of the call wages to partially fund that. And I'm not sure if that's going to be able to fully do that. We have roughly 10,000 left. I did not shoot. I don't 24, 14, 886. Yeah, so we have 10,000 left. Let's see. So we did 14886 divided by 9 equals, then times 4 equals. At this going rate, we're going to need 6,600 just for the call wages.
Wow.
And that's not kind of including like a really busy week that we had last week. So it is what it is.
But there is a balance of 10,000, right?
Yes,
that'll
we're gonna
recall.
need at least 6,000 of it though to finish off the year.
So do you foresee any problem with assuming that we can maybe take $3,000 out of the call wages line, let's say, and use that to at least partially fill the shortfall that you're going to have in the training wages line? Does that sound like a reasonable?
Yes, that would work if I had, yeah, so right now we have 1537 plus 3,000. That gets 4,500. and we average 1848 per a 4-week cycle. So how many cycles can we do? Divided by, let's see, 1848 times 3. Well, that gets us a little more than two pay cycles. So I'm still gonna be shy. If, I mean, I feel training is very important every week. I just don't see how we have new guys that can learn what to do if we don't go to training. If we don't have any money, I guess we don't go to training. So I'm just
Well,
wondering.
I guess what I was proposing is, if I understood it correctly, you're gonna need about $6,000 of additional funding for that training wages line. Is that the right number? Is that,
Yeah, yes.
all right, on top of whatever small balance you have left, 1,500 change?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going 1848 times 4, that gives me 739. If we do minus 1537, which we already have, that's 5855.
Right. So what if we did this? What if we did and then I know, Bob, I see your hand up, so I'm gonna go to you next. What if we did a FinCom transfer of $3,000 to the training wages line? And then we assume that we can do a line-to-line transfer of $3,000 from the call wages into that training wages line. Would that solve this year's problems?
I think so, as long as our call volume doesn't go up.
Right.
If we have like another week like last week, I would probably say no, but hopefully we don't have another last week.
All right, Bob.
Yeah, Lenny, I'm just curious, maybe you can enlighten me why this year we're going beyond our budget. Is it because of new people coming into the department? Or is it just extraordinary circumstances? Or is it some other?
Well, I think it's been low for a long time. I think we have new people on the department, and I also think several individuals have attended more trainings than in the past. I'm just going down that if we have 9 firefighters and if everybody showed up every week for 3 hours, 3 to 3.5 hours, I would need $33,000.
Right.
I
And
guess I'm remembering
Just for that.
maybe you correct me if I'm mistaken, but I'm remembering that when we were talking about this line, maybe it was Walter, not with you, but that these training, that people don't show for the training, but the new people are showing up.
Yeah.
It's costing us money. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it appears to be everybody's been having a lot better attendance.
Yeah. Okay.
Last year, I
Okay.
did write that I was shy by like $2,000, and I think you guys took it from the call wages last year.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it did, but I was shy last year, and now this year I have more people on the payroll. So I kind of don't know how these numbers even worked in the past.
Becky?
they work because of low attendance. Because when we originally started with that system, I did the same calculation about if everybody goes to training, and I even used 52 weeks, and came in with a $30,000 figure. And at that point in time, the attendance was only, the cost to the town was a quarter of their budget and almost never went over about 25%. You currently have people that are very responsive and helpful. They're at the trainings, they're at, you used to only have 1 or 2 people going to calls. You now get more numbers going to calls, which is, on a weekend last weekend, it was critical to have that support.
Stop doing such a good job, Lenny.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, any other questions for Lenny? All right. personally, my inclination is to do what I suggested beforehand, which is do a FinCom transfer of 3,000. Lenny, I kind of understand, and I appreciate that you're telling us that if there's kind of normal volume of calls, we should be fine. But if there's an unusual period, we may need to do another transfer, and I think we understand that. So, but at least for now, we can maybe take this step of doing a $3,000 reserve transfer of $3,000 from FinCom reserves.
So are you proposing just I get 3,000 from my call wages and then 3,000 from the reserve?
That was the proposal, yeah. With
Okay,
an
yeah.
understanding that, if there's an unusual call volume in these last however many cycles we have left, that you may need to come back to us.
Okay. Well, as long as I can go back to you guys, that should work we should be good for a few months at least.
Okay, Susie, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that, it looks like there's 10,000 in call wages now and 6,600 is needed. So that's where you came up with the 3,000 transfer out of call wages, right?
Yes.
And so at the end of the year, we do other line transfers if we need to. So we would be able to meet something unexpected, or we would have FinCom reserve at the end of the year also.
Now, so let's tackle this year, and then so I think I'll just make that motion to transfer $3,000 from our FinCom reserve fund to the fire department's training wages line.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, George,
Arvanitis, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosher, aye.
Stein, aye.
Walton, I.
Okay. All right, so Lenny, I guess before you go, I'm curious what your thoughts are on the FY25 training wages amount. Like if you do we need to kind of rethink that? This is a tough year to be doing that, but I appreciate that you've done some calculating here, and it's like we may have a structural problem with this line.
So if everything's identical for next year, I would need basically another $6,000.
Right.
And that wouldn't even cover another, if I get one or two more firefighters to join, and then at some point the state is going to start mandating different types of trainings for firefighters. That's going to be a different story to talk to you guys about. Potentially every firefighter has to go to the mass call vol course. That would be 240 hours and several other ones. So that would be a huge, that would actually be really huge.
Yeah. So these are proposals that have been
coming down the pike in probably 2026 that they're going to start doing. So that's going to be huge. But as for the way things are running right now, I think if I had an extra $6,000, and if everything's the same for next year as it is for this year, I think I'd be within it. But again, that wouldn't cover if I have one extra firefighter to join.
Right.
So right now we have 9. If you added one, that would be 10% more off of 20. Yeah, so it's like $2,400 basically per firefighter. So, yeah.
Okay. Susie.
I'm looking at the proposal that we have in our FY25, and I see that the training wages are 23,900. So it sounds like it'd be more than 6,000, because I think you told us 33,000 for a full year.
Yeah. The problem is I don't get to decide who gets to show up for training and who doesn't, unless, it's some weeks a couple people are sick and a couple people are busy and there's only just a couple people. And then I can go for a couple months straight where everybody shows up. So I'm, you know, that's out of my control. So I'm just kind of putting it on paper that with 9 firefighters showing up at 100% attendance rate, we're going to be at 33,000.
Right, so I'm saying to FY 23, we have a number, I mean, FY 25, we have the number 23,000, but it should probably be 33,000.
No,
Well,
Well, I'm thinking if I had an extra 6,000, I would cover an average 2024 year. 2025 is the same. So 18,000 plus 6,000 is 24,000 instead of 23,000. If everybody does 100% attendance, I will need a 33,000.
but that's not gonna happen.
No, we're not going to never see 100% attendance, but some people are people, you know, when a friend gets another friend to join, then all of a sudden that friend will show up to make sure all the time just to have, you know, just to train with his other friend.
so the figure is actually in the budget is 23,903, so it's almost 24.
Okay.
Comparable to this year, but the call, to get that figure, I redistributed, and the call figure that we ended up with was 19,104. But if you look back at the actuals, but it's tough. It's a new department, so the actuals never went above, 14,500 in the past.
Well, we've changed
but
it to a
there-
3-hour minimum. We
Right.
changed it to a 3-hour minimum, which kind of changes it. I asked for a fair amount of more money, and you guys only gave 10,000 for the call wages when we were discussing the 3-hour minimum. And I'm actually kind of surprised I'm within budget on that.
So it might go over next year.
Yeah.
And if you get a new person,
We'll go
Yeah.
over.
All right.
The only-
Maybe what we need to do is, I mean, we've boosted the training wages line for next year to almost 24,000. Maybe we need a year to kind of evaluate, this. Lenny, am I correct, Nick? FY 25 will be your second kind of full year?
Going on third, I think.
Okay, going on third. Okay. I guess the point being that I think we'll have a good sense next year if we need to kind of or maybe sort of balance these lines. We'll have a couple of years of sort of track record under the kind of newer
Regime.
circumstances.
Yeah.
And then, but we understand that we might be in a situation next year where, if you have a similar year to this year, if you add another employee that we may run short on this line. George?
Yeah, the one thing I would say is if what Lenny's telling us that training wages are going to could go up substantially in 2026.
Right.
Might be wise to give a little extra this year so we can start ramping up towards what our future may look like. We already know that we're kind of running low on this line anyways, so why not add $3,000 or $4,000 to it to start moving us in the right direction?
Mm-hmm.
Because then we're going to end up with a big jump in the subsequent year.
Right.
It's not like this money isn't going to get spent, because it sounds like it's going to if we put a few extra thousand in there.
Jim Hemingway?
Yes, Lenny, do you have any prospective candidates right now? I mean, how does the future look in terms of increasing?
I got possibly 2 or 3 that I'm talking to.
Oh, okay. So these numbers could really rise quite dramatically if the fire department increases in size, 2 to 3 more people.
Yes.
Oh.
I just did a quick thing with my calculator. per one firefighter if they attend 50 training nights times 3.5 equals times $21 equals $3,600.
Mhm.
So, you know, that's if they make 100%. So one firefighter could possibly add $3,600 to the line item.
And that's, so that's the perfect attendance assumption, like if
That
they.
would be the perfect attendance, yeah.
Okay.
So
What was that number? 3,500, you said?
I got 3675.
3675. Okay.
So I emailed Becky a couple things. I don't know if she could send them out to you, like just some notes so you could just double check my numbers.
I sent the narrative, Lenny, and I'll send the, it was the training.
Yeah, the training narrative. And then I also sent you just a quick thing of the call salaries,
Mhm.
just to give you a heads up that, you know, you can't take like $6,000 out of it and then it won't be depleted by the end of this year.
Right.
The rate we're going, but
Mhm.
I think 3,000. I think it'll be close, but I think I'll just be back to you guys by the end of the year.
Bob?
Yeah, Lenny, I just want to ask, that's one other variable which we didn't talk about, which is just from your description of this training budget and how it's changed, it seems like now we're providing a lot more training to the department than we were in the past. I think that's easy to see. So therefore the
I-
cost has gone up. As do
I
we, pardon me?
I don't believe that's the case. I've always came to Thursday trainings, and that's basically what we've done.
Well, why is the
Um,
cost going up then? So,
The minimum.
because of the rate?
No,
I-
the rate is only based on the call response. I mean, the minimum 3 hours is
Only
only
for calls, right, not training.
not training. I think
Who's it?
Okay, maybe I'm not clear with my question is that why this training cost is going up significantly as part of your budget is because you have 50 training sessions per year and they're now fully attended or more. You're more successful in getting people to show up for these training sessions. Is that right?
Well, last year we had less people on. We lost Mark, but we gained 3 firefighters. So
Okay, so you're getting more training though.
gained 2 firefighters and more. And so, like I said, one firefighter, if they show up to every training, is $3,600. We just gained 2 firefighters and had an overall higher attendance.
I guess
And again, last year I was under budget as well.
I guess I was leading up to the question was that if we have firefighters now that are being trained, are they going to need continual training, or is this something that when they're trained up, then they will sort of taper off on their training attendance? I mean, is that logical
I
or
think-
no?
I think training is imperative for everybody, for safety and for the well-being of everybody, to be fluent on everything. And I stress everybody should be going to training regardless of experience.
Okay, so that's not an issue then, the length of time the person has served in the department and whether this is redundant to them or something.
Yeah. No, everything, we got to cover a lot of stuff. We cover just as much stuff as a full-time department elsewhere. We're kind of still, other departments train just as much, if not more. So the way we've always done is train every Thursday night. And, that's always been the case. I know last year I was under budget. And now this year we have 2 additional firefighters. So that's where we're at.
All right, so it seems pretty clear there are 2 drivers here, which are the number of firefighters that we have employed at any given time, and then the crew that we have now just seems to be more engaged and attending trainings at a higher rate, which is good. It's not a problem, it's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like those are really the 2 factors that are driving this increase. And
So we have the other question. I was going to just continue the question. How many firefighters are you looking for to fully staffed, department?
Well, me personally, as many as we can have, as many as that are responsible that I could get, honestly. It would be nice to have 15 people on the department. If my back goes out and one key person leaves town, there may not be anybody in town to respond to a call. So I take it seriously that we can actually make a crew of some sort for a call any day of the week. And it's not going to be good in the long run if we're only dependent on one person to be doing that. Because when that one person breaks, if we don't have a pool to pull from, you're not going to have a department that can respond to calls. Now, most of our guys work out of town during the day, so there's only a couple people in town during the day, and that's just the way it is. So,
Susie?
I just wanted to check if the state's newer requirements for training would come under unfunded mandate principle, or the towns all have to suck it up, because that will be affecting everybody. And if it's not funded, then everybody will be in the same boat. It might be an unfunded mandate.
I believe it's an OSHA unfunded mandate.
Jim?
Lenny, you mentioned that you have two to three more prospective candidates. So what you're also saying is there's no limit on how many people you would like to join the fire department. Is that correct?
To me, the more the merrier.
More the
The
merrier.
more people we have in town that's on the department, that will likely reduce the chance that there's only one person available for a call.
Okay.
I still think it's cheaper than I think paying call wages and training wages to 9 or 10 firefighters. I still believe that's all cheaper than hiring one firefighter. And that one firefighter is only going to get you 40 hours a week.
Right.
I mean, I'm just trying to put it in proportion.
What, Lenny, can you give us a little perspective on sort of the kind of historical trend of like what firefighters the town has had at any given time? Like, have we ever had a crew of 15 people? Is that?
We used to have 20.
In
In the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I think there was like 23, 24 people on the roster.
Got it.
Um,
When was the last time we had, say, 15?
Oh, I don't ever remember 15.
About
I could-
15 years ago, probably around 2006. No, around 2000, probably.
Yeah, it might be really hard for me to look at it and figure that out. But
Yeah,
I don't ever remember seeing 15 people at any one time since 05.
Got it.
13 I've seen, but not 15.
Okay. All right. All right. Before we let Lenny go, I think we have to make a decision about what to do about the FY25 training wages line in our budget. And I think we've heard a couple of proposals here. One is to just kind of stick with what we have budgeted right now, which is a little under $24,000, kind of use next year as another year to evaluate this line. I think George made a pretty logical case for at least maybe bumping that line up by a few $1,000s also to kind of prepare for what we think is going to be a more significant increase in FY26. Does anybody want to make a specific proposal?
I'll make a motion that we increase the amount that we are currently have in the FY25 budget by $3,000.
Make it 27 then.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Why don't we use a round number and just call it 27?
And I'll
Okay,
second
raise it.
that.
I'll make a motion that we raise the training wages line to $27,000
And I'll
for
second.
FY25.
April 2nd. Any discussion? All right, George. Oh, sorry, Bob, I see your hand now.
I just want to, point out the obvious, which is that we're having a tough time with our budget this year because we have some substantial increases, which are driving the bottom line up. And I think that for that reason, I would say to stick with what we have and evaluate it the way you suggested as an option to bumping it. We have a lot of issues that are, a lot of requests that are pushing our budget higher. And I think that this is something we dealt with here with the reserve. We could deal with it again next year with the reserve. We can evaluate it more fully then. As far as going in the right direction to anticipating some future increases, that I don't see the logic in that. When they come, we'll deal with those too. But as this line goes, we'll have to see how it works out. That's my opinion. And we can address it just like we did tonight if Lenny needs more an infusion of cash next year. But in the meantime, we have a serious problem with our budget and with the levy. So I'd say stick with the number we have, or maybe go up to 25 or something at most.
All right, George.
Anticipating a higher number is half the logic. The other half of the logic is we pretty much determined that $24,000 does not look like it's going to be adequate. So to go up another $3,000 puts us in line to make sure that our fire department is adequately trained.
We have a motion. Are we gonna vote on the motion?
Yeah.
We're still debating it.
Yeah,
We're discussing.
Becky.
I just want clarification, George, is the 3,000 going to training or to call wages? Or
The motion was to increase the training wages
I'm
line
sorry, missed the.
to $27,000, right? Because it's at 24 right now, or
Yep,
just
yep,
under.
yep.
Standing by to make a change if voted.
All right.
Yeah, we just raised our levy capacity or decreased.
All right, George, why don't you start the voting? then?
Overnight aside.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Stein, aye.
Walton, aye.
Okay. All right, so we've just voted to increase the FY25 budget for fire department training wages to 27,000 even. Okay. Anything else you need to discuss with us, Lenny?
I don't think so. Thank you.
All right.
How's
Yeah.
your back, Lenny?
Yeah, thank
Slow-
you. You're
Yeah, it's
doing a
slowly
great job. Yes.
Yeah, I think the fact that people are attending training at a higher rate must have something to do with the job you're doing. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
How is the back? How is the back doing, Lenny?
It's been better.
Okay.
Yeah,
Backs are tough.
I couldn't move at all last week, and this week I find myself walking around, but still hurts.
Get better soon.
Sounds like physical therapy's in your future.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're speaking from experience here, George.
Yep, you bet.
Mhm.
All right. For those keeping track, we've got a FinCom reserve balance now of $49,094.78 after tonight's two transfers. Okay. Let's shift gears and talk about FY25 budget.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lenny.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lenny.
So I guess maybe I think a few of us might have an update or two from regarding the regional school budget. I had a chance to watch about 15 minutes of their meeting, I think from last night, and it sounds like they're looking to have a four towns meeting on April 20th. And so I'm hoping that you guys can kind of hold a spot on your calendar if you're around. I know that's school's spring break, but fortunately I'm coming back that Thursday, so I can attend. But I think we are moving towards a four towns meeting on the 20th. I think there wasn't. I think the Amherst Finance Committee is taking this up at their next meeting, which I think is happening like any day now, this week, I think. So I don't think there was a lot of, there was any kind of significant update from the kind of town council or the finance committee from Amherst. I think Pelham, the rep from Pelham said that they didn't get a firm no on the new budget, which was a little bit counter to what we had heard at our last meeting. But I think the way she explained it is that they've asked the regional school committee to do kind of a 3-year projection of kind of where they see expenses and revenue kind of over the next 3 years. And essentially they said they wanted to see that information before they made any commitments to providing additional funding beyond, the last 4 towns meeting budget that we looked at. So one thing that really confused me, and maybe Becky, you might have some, maybe there's some historical precedent for this, but Doug was basically bringing up a scenario where the towns who hold town meetings, the 3 towns, could adjourn their annual town meetings without taking a vote on the regional budget and take it up at a follow-up meeting. And he was talking about how there was some precedent for Amherst having done this before they moved to town council government. That seemed like kind of a crazy idea to me, to like, would the idea be that you would have to have like a second follow-up town meeting? And I think the reason for this is I think he's sort of trying, like, anticipating that there's going to be a lot of kind of last minute like reworking of the budget. And I think, so that we're not actually going to put forth the budget that was passed at town meeting, but we're actually going to have to, to do some kind of an amendment on the floor of this. Anyway, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention because that sounded like a kind of problematic scenario that I couldn't really wrap my head around. But yeah, Becky.
So part of the problem is Leverett and Shutesbury are both voting the week after the 4-town meeting.
Right.
So unless we come up with, if we all agree at that meeting to a new budget number.
Yeah.
But I don't see the value of what Doug was talking about. I mean, conceptually, we could all have the information that, we're all trying to get to a specific regional assessment number, but I think the fact may be that if we don't achieve what the school committee voted, I think the vote is going to be a no.
Right.
So the budget's not going to pass.
Yeah, well, and I think that's
So I don't know how he wiggles out of that.
Well, I think his thought is that there's some work that's going to happen after an April 20th 4 towns meeting that will allow us to put on the floor of a second or a follow-up town meeting that is probably has a budget number and corresponding assessment method that falls somewhere in between the February budget and the budget that the school committee's actually passed. But I don't know. I'm kind of speculating. Bob, I saw your hand up, I think.
Yeah, I had a long talk with John Trickey today, and he sort of passed along to me some scuttlebutt. Anyway, he said he's been talking to Andy Steinberg, and
John Trickey from the Leverett.
No, from Amherst. Trickey's from Pelham. He's the chair for Pelham. So he said that his committee definitely has voted and unanimously to not recommend the 8.2%. So whether she said their rep to the school committee said otherwise. He told me that just a couple hours ago. So
Okay.
said that they are not going to recommend it to town meeting. They're going to pull it out of the budget as an independent article so that it can be addressed independently from the rest of the budget. He also said that Steinberg told him that he didn't believe that Amherst would resolve this issue in time for, say, our town meeting. And he reminded me that one town that revotes this budget down busts the budget. It's all it requires. It has to be unanimous. It's not like the apportion method. The apportion method takes two towns to knock it down. This is what he told me. So Becky, you may disagree, but this is what I heard from him. And he thinks that the idea of having a separate special town meeting might be the way it ends up, because Amherst will not give us any real firm information about what they're willing to pay. And without that information, we don't even know what we're dealing with. We're up in the air. We all know this. So maybe that'll be resolved at the four town meeting. But according to what he told me, he doesn't think that Steinberg believes that it will be. So that's what I heard through John Trickey today. And I think it's kind of interesting.
So Bob, can I just get one clarification? Because I think it's important for us. Their plan, you're saying by pulling the regional school budget line out, so that would allow them to basically approve a budget at the town meeting for all other aspects of town government other than the regional school committee.
Exactly.
I see. And so he's essentially in that scenario, they probably wouldn't vote on a regional school budget at their town meeting at all.
Well, he certainly said that his committee, the finance committee, that is not recommending that the town meeting approve it. They're recommending that it not approve it, this 8.2%. So they don't have a place in their budget for that money.
Becky, do we even have the discretion to not have like a warrant article on at town meeting? Like, don't we have to have a warrant article that on the budget that the regional school committee has approved? Like, we don't have the option of not putting on that at our town meeting, right?
Well, if we're voting against the budget,
We can
that's
put in
the
whatever
way to do
line,
it.
we can put in whatever amount we want on that line, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so that, I guess that's what I'm asking. I
But
thought,
the budget will fail.
right, but I guess I was under the impression, but I may have just making the wrong assumption, that we have to vote on the budget that the regional school committee has passed. That, like, we don't have the discretion to say, we're not even gonna vote on that at our town meeting, we're gonna vote on an alternative budget amount.
No, you could do that.
I think we could change the amount, right?
Yes.
All
But
right,
the budget will fail.
okay. George,
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here, really.
Mm.
If we're talking about, I think we're gonna put together a budget with a smaller number than the 8.2% increase. And then there's gonna be a warrant article for the assessment method. And that's gonna be based on the 8.2. So Becky, well, and what John's saying that they're gonna do in the town of Pelham, I'm confused myself. You got to take both those things off and then have a special town meeting at a later point. But what if we had both of those and we put in our number and pass the budget, and then the towns agreed to raise the assessment a little? Couldn't we have a special town meeting before the end of the years where we could approve a new method and have a warrant article where we approve a new budget or a modification to the budget? Can we do that, Becky? Well, if the warrant article right now for the special town meeting is the assessment method with an 8.2 guardrail. If at town meeting, everybody decides we're going to do 5% guardrail on it.
Yeah.
And we will then, for our annual town meeting where the warrant is already posted, we could have a special town meeting to change that warrant article to 5% and approve that and
I think you
supersede.
would do what Doug was talking about before. You would just hold that article and
Okay.
close the meeting except for that article and
Okay.
keep the meeting open to a
But-
future date. That's how all the towns could converge to a point in time where they actually had a viable plan.
And then as far as our budget goes, could we approve a budget with where are we at now? I forget, 2.7% increase. But have a special town meeting to actually modify the approved budget if we decide to go to some other level above that. Then we would need that special town meeting anyways for the warrant article. Then could we adjust the budget?
But don't the other towns also have to agree? We can't do this unilaterally.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. If the
Right.
Fort Town meeting is on the 20th, our warrant
Right.
article is already posted.
Strategy.
I would like to put together a budget and propose and pass a full budget, because I can't imagine passing a budget with a line missing that's $1.6 million.
Well, we could, I mean, if we know on the 27th what our target number is,
We can amend it on the floor, couldn't we?
if it's less than what is that,
Right.
then, yeah, it has to be less than the original proposal.
So what if our budget, I hate to say this, but what if our budget is the 8.2% number with an understanding that as a committee, we're gonna recommend not passing that. And then, if all goes well, for towns meeting, we come to some alternative budget number that's lower than that. Then when it comes time for our annual town meeting, we have an amendment. Is that something we need to run by Paul to see if he would allow us to amend that? I mean, it would be amending it down, so,
Oh, you can amend down.
okay, that's not controversial. Okay,
You know,
got it.
I don't think, I mean, even if it's a significant amount, we'll talk it through with Paul ahead, make sure he doesn't have issues, but I think, yeah, I think when you're reducing, I know, Paul, if the amount is too large, like, he might have a problem with it, but I think we could talk
Well,
that piece.
That was going to be the second thing I wanted to talk about was, and I mentioned this briefly in the last meeting that I was thinking about it. When we go to the Fort Town meeting, we're going to have to come up with a number that we're willing to go up to anyways, right? All the towns are going to be asked, well, what can you do? And so I'm wondering if we could maybe figure that out tonight and put that in our budget and take that to annual town meeting. And if they go up to that, we've got the money for it. If they go above it, sorry, because bottom line is we can only afford so much if we can determine what that is. So I'm just throwing that out right now for everybody to think about when we get to the budget.
But procedurally, Becky, we can't amend on annual town meeting if it's an increase, right?
Right.
Maybe if it's a trivial amount.
Because the citizens have to be
Warned.
fairly warned.
Okay,
And if you gave them no notice of that potential for them to come and express themselves, and
And that's the benefit of pushing that number up to as high as we think we could go. Because if the region decides on something and say, okay, Shutesbury can go to that percentage, we'll work out a number that gets us that percentage, or probably they're going to work something out, it'll be below, and we can lower it on the town floor.
right.
So that's it. I won't talk again.
Susie,
I have a couple questions. One, do we know what Amherst timeline is? We know we're on the 27th of April. Do we know what Amherst timeline is?
so I think there were a couple dates that, I wish I had written this down. I think, so like I said, I think there's gonna be some initial feedback presumably from the Amherst Finance Committee that's coming. I don't know, maybe somebody can look whenever they're meeting next, they're taking this up. I think the town manager presents the budget to the town council on, I thought they said May 1st. Does that sound right to people, or anybody know?
It's a Tuesday night.
I think that's what they said. But I think I think what they typically do is they present a number for the regional school budget actually before that date. That's been their practice since it's such a large component of their budget. So, but I think maybe this is what Andy Steinberg might have been alluding to, is that I think the timeline is going to be tough for Amherst. Like, I don't think they're going to actually have they're not going to have presented a budget to the town council before we have our annual town meeting. I think that's my understanding.
And then the other question I have is, it sounded like what Doug was saying is the word adjourn our annual town meeting without the decision done. So, and that sounds a little bit more like fitting the timing into what else happens. And I agree, we could put in a number that we like 8.2 and then not recommend it. And then then we adjourn, and then any number that we go after, that comes after that, when we complete our meeting, would be a lower number than 8.2. Nope, it's not going to be more than 8.2.
Yeah.
So we could put it in there at 8.2, we could adjourn the meeting with that it resolved, and then we could finish that later, if that's what I think is being suggested.
Yeah, I think we've got two choices there, right? I think we have three choices. We could put in our budget right now the 8.2% assessment number, with an understanding that we're not going to recommend the town approve that, and that we are working on an alternative amount that will be ready to either present as an amendment at annual town meeting, or something that gets taken up at an adjourned, a following date. That's scenario one. I think scenario two would be to put in the February number, the 2 point whatever percent. And then I think scenario three would be to do something along the lines of what George was saying, which is find a number somewhere in between there that we think is, tenable for the town, and put that number in, go to Four Towns meeting, present that, we think this is the best that we can do. And so, and see if we end up at that number, right? I mean, are those our three options?
Yes. That's the way I see it.
April?
Yeah, I think those are our three options, and I am leaning in favor of what George is proposing. I think that gives us something to work with, and something realistic. I'm also wondering, if we adjourn town meeting, would we be adjourning without any budget? Would everything be on hold, or do we have to? If we adjourned it without this large piece of the budget settled, does that mean that we don't have a budget?
Right, we don't.
We don't have it. We can't. Okay.
We would need another town meeting, right?
Don't adjourn, but you don't adjourn. You hold the meeting open.
You do.
Is that the word, hold it open?
Yeah,
But
you
okay.
continue the meeting. There's a procedure to continue a meeting, holding it open, so that, the budget is still sitting there, and then you would, resolve this major issue and come back and finish your budget.
As
And
long,
it would take weeks before we could do that, because we'd have to post another.
Well, that would be space
I-
time, just another town meeting.
I don't think the time framing is the same. When you hold open a meeting, sometimes they hold open the meeting and meet like shortly after. Isn't that?
It's, as long as it's in the same fiscal year, I believe it's, whenever you decide.
And the rest of the warrant would be settled. So it would be just coming back, because the meeting's been held open, to solve the budget question.
but one key point there, not to forget, is
Go
we
ahead,
would
George.
still have to have a sufficient amount so that we could decrease, but we still wouldn't be able to increase because it's the same meeting.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I think we would do that. We would continue the meeting once Amherst has actually approved the budget, right? Like, as long as we're not resolving this at our annual town meeting, we might as well wait until after the town council has actually voted to
We
approve. the
have to,
budget, right?
yeah.
Why run the risk of like having to come back again? Bob,
Yeah, I just want to say, I personally, the way I think about developing a budget is doing it all together and knowing all the major components of where they're at, and then adjusting everything so that it comes out the way you want it in terms of the increase, which it always is. But not having this big piece, not knowing what it's going to be, really makes that impossible to do a comprehensive analysis of the budget. I really think that we're in a fix here, and there's no way around it, because as far as I understand, Amherst is not going to make a decision, and that's really critical to this whole process for us. And they're not going to make a decision until after our town meeting. That's what I have understood from listening to John Trickey and so if that's the case, I think just putting a high number in there doesn't really work for me, because I'm trying to keep numbers as low as I can reasonably do. And this, we already compromised. We agreed to go up to extend the increase in the budget back earlier days, so long ago when we had what seemed to be a pretty reasonable town meeting. And now the thing's been blown up, and I think we need to have more information to decide what that number should be. I think for me, I would just put our old number in there. And I think as far as the notification issue goes, if we're going to have a second town meeting, we can provide notification before it. Why can't we, if we're going to go up, why can't we notify in the normal way for the extended town meeting or whatever it is?
well, because that's not going to be enough time, right? If we meet on if we meet the four towns meet on April 20th, we're already past our deadline, right?
Oh, do you think we're going to get the information from Amherst at that time? I don't.
So
The warrant will be posted when we go to the 4-town meeting. It has to be, unless,
already have been posted, right? So, but I mean, to me, in my mind, we have to come out of that four towns meeting with a budget number that we at least, as four towns, have like a high degree of confidence is gonna it's gonna be
That's
passed.
exactly my point, AJ. So yeah.
But I guess, but Bob, like we're not gonna have an opportunity. Let's assume that does play out and we do walk out of that meeting with a budget number, some compromise that falls between the February budget and the one the region has voted on. We're not gonna be, we'll have already posted a meeting. I'm sorry, our warrant articles, right? And so if that number is higher than the number that's been posted on with the warrant article, then we're not going to be able to amend that at town meeting.
That confuses me somehow. Seems like we should be able to do that, but
You can't.
you say no?
You can't, no.
That's the point. We can only amend it if it's in a
At the actual town meeting, but if we're having another meeting, why can't we
right.
amend?
Well, exactly. I mean, I guess I was sort of thinking like we really want to advocate for a process that's not going to require us to hold the meeting open, but maybe that's not, maybe I was wrong to assume that before tonight's meeting. Maybe that's not such a big deal to do that. I don't know. In my mind, at the time, it seemed like when Doug was presenting this as a potential procedure, it seemed to me like, wow, that seemed crazy, but maybe it's not so unusual. George.
I just want to address the point that Bob made. I think what we're doing is what we should be doing, and that is we're putting together a budget. We're looking at the budget. We're going to go through the process, and we're going to decide what we can afford. And we can put a number in there for that. I think we're going about it the right way. And then we send a message to the four towns that this is what we can afford and this is what we're willing to do. That's what I'm proposing that we do. I'm not proposing that the tail wags the dog here. And then secondly, Becky, quick question. How much money does it cost to run a special town meeting?
There's that.
well, it's, okay, so the special town, you don't have the election potentially at the special town meeting, so the costs aren't, but you do have to have the automark, and it was like $1,000 to get the automark.
Oh, it's 1,000 or two, not
And
10.
then all the people, it's like $2,000.
The auto mark isn't involved in the town meeting. It's
Oh,
only
good.
involved
That's
in
great.
the election.
And it's
Okay, so
also
then we don't need that,
people's-
so it's just hiring people to be the workers and it'll be minimal.
Okay,
It's also people's time.
right. Yeah.
And I wonder if, a special town meeting, can it totally revise a budget?
No, you're not gonna have a special town meeting. That
Right,
is,
so it's not
no,
separate
once
that
we
way.
Well, we
can-
would for the warrant article, for the assessment method.
I don't think so, George. I don't know. We have to look at it more, but holding open the annual town meeting where there, all these issues.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot that point. My bad. No,
That's-
you're right. I
that's
forgot that point.
Process that you would probably file. But
Hmm.
AJ, I cannot find that sheet you shared with us most recently that shows what our figure would be at 8.2%.
Okay,
Um,
I'll pull it up.
Okay.
While I'm doing that, Susie, I see your hand up.
Yeah, what I was thinking the word special town meeting doesn't work because I can't believe you could
Correct.
run a special town meeting to redo the entire budget warrant article. That doesn't sound like it would be okay.
Yeah,
I
Hey.
just want, AJ, I just wanted
Yeah,
to
it's
share
fine.
that I've been, I was texting back and forth, with Margie McGinnis, the Leverett admin, because she and I spoke yesterday and she told me she was, I asked for what was Leverett thinking about the new budget
yeah,
from the school committee, and she said she did not know. So what she did in they had their budget hearing last night.
oh,
So she prepared two budgets, one with out the new request and one with the new request. So I asked her what happened at that point, and she told me that to the old figure, oh, shoot, now I can't see it. So my understanding is Leverett has put 8.2%, $126,000 in their budget.
Really?
and, okay, got it. But they haven't voted to recommend that, approving that, or they have?
I believe that's what the direction they're leaning. I mean, they're putting putting the full amount in their budget. I don't know what that means for what they're gonna vote.
When's their town
That's what
meeting?
their town
Same
meeting
as
is
ours.
April 27th, same as Shutesbury's.
April.
What was I gonna say? We also have to vote on the assessment method, if that's being changed, and I don't know if it's Leverett, did they bring that up at their budget meeting? That the assessment method changed, even just for this 1 year?
I'm sure they didn't waste any time talking about that. They only talked about figures. I
Yeah.
mean, I can ask Margie tomorrow, but,
The assessment method has to be voted on every year because it's an alternative assessment, and it's gonna be impacted, right? Whatever the guardrail however they're utilizing guardrails is gonna be dependent on the budget number. So yes, you're totally right, April, that we're gonna have to tackle both of those at a follow-up, meeting. Bob.
Yeah, just on that issue. They did not employ the assessment method that we've approved in the past. So if we look at the article that for the assessment method, the alternative method, doesn't it show that we used the statutory with the 5-year rolling average? So if that's approved, that's not reflected in their budget. So it doesn't really work, right?
I agree, Bob. I think, and they did not, I was a little disappointed because they did not discuss this at their meeting last night, that I think there's a problem with the assessment method. So I'm gonna reach out to Doug tomorrow and explain to him why. Well, there are really two issues, right? One, that we don't think it's kind of a fair it's not a fair attribution, and there's also a problem where the language in the budget motion that they passed does not accurately describe what they've done. Which is
Right. We're not gonna approve that at town
Right.
meeting.
Yeah, they need to change that. Jim.
Yeah, I thought when we voted on this and decided to turn down the 8.2%, we also were going to communicate that back to the region or to the region, as well as indicate that the methodology was not right that was used, and that we recommended that they revisit that. So we've already communicated this methodology topic or issue to the committee, haven't we? To the region,
Yeah, but we haven't.
and are they ignoring it?
Well, I think they're so focused on the 8.2% that they did not. I don't think they spent any significant time discussing it as the committee. We have communicated it to Doug, but I just don't think he's particularly focused on this part of the problem. So I'm going to talk to him about this, express our concerns, let him know that the current language we believe is not appropriate. And then I think this is going to be part of what we discuss at the Four Towns meeting.
Yeah, I think that's really important for Shutesbury. I mean, if the methodology is critical from Shutesbury, and that's visible and talked about, and that we get back on track with the methodology that we've all agreed to in past years.
One thing,
and we don't want to let that get lost in this, with all this turbulence that's going on now.
Agreed. One thing is, I know that Doug mentioned that they're building in caucus time into the Four Towns meeting, unlike the last, I think, couple that we've had. So I think there is an expectation that there's gonna be some negotiation happening at this Four Towns meeting. Yeah. Susie, and then April.
So I sent everybody a copy of the email I sent to Doug, and it mentioned those 3 elements. I did not send it to the regional school committee, but Anna was at our FinCom meeting, and we reiterated the points to her. I think it would have been good if I had sent it to the regional school committee too, but this document we're looking at comes from the central office, so that's where the email was sent.
And Anna did communicate our response that, we do not think this 8.2% is workable for Shutesbury. So she did give that feedback at last night's meeting. April.
Well, just part of the process. I feel like it's very unfortunate that the regional school committee went forward with this so late in the process after it's just the process really is screwed up. And the regional school committee, it feels like, I know they have a lot of authority, but it really feels like they overstepped or overreached. And have put us all in a quandary, because if we don't have a budget, isn't there a facility? Doesn't the state freeze your budget for FY24, and there's some mechanism where the region loses our autonomy?
Right. The process is they would put us on what they call a 112 budget, which is basically the state would take our FY24 budget.
Yeah.
So this number, I guess, this 33.7 million, and they would essentially divide that into 12 portions, and they would dole that money out to us on a monthly basis, not to us, to the region on a monthly basis, and would strongly urge the towns, the various committees to pass a budget. So however long it took us to do that, we would be operating on a budget that's based on our FY24. Jim?
Yeah, maybe just to muddy the waters a little bit more. I just going back in this negotiation process and discussion process, the last time we got together with the Four Towns, I think we all did agree on a budget. And now there's been this movement since then that might not be adequate. But I don't think we have any substantive information today that suggests what our number should be, or if we indeed, as Shutesbury, from a Shutesbury perspective, should be increasing. So I think from a negotiation perspective, as part of 4 towns, we should probably start with where we were in February. And then work from there as we gather more information. I don't understand why we want to start with some high number, other than, you know, the meetings and you can go up but not down and whatever.
George?
Mhm.
I'm really happy to hear April make the comments she did about the way that this has been approached, because I don't think it's realistic, and we need to be realistic. And I just want to go back and say, we're here having one of the big agenda items for tonight is the budget. And I think when we get to the budget and we start making some of our maneuvers, I'd like to send the regional budget back down to $39,000 increase, not 127.28, and look at everything else and see where we are and see how much we can reasonably raise that $39,000 increase and debate that. We're kicking the can here, you know, and I think we need to look at the numbers and we'll have a better idea. And I think we are far enough along in the process that we can do that.
Becky?
I just want to throw out there that if Leverett goes to 8.2 and Amherst follows, I believe Pelham will drop in place despite what John is saying now, because he always does. Which will leave us again in the position of being, you know, if we're not looking at that possibility, we're going to be the ones killing the budget.
Do you think Amherst can really go up that additional amount?
They're not going to, George.
There's no way.
Oh, you're right.
Okay.
So it's going to be Amherst that makes the call as usual. And,
Mhm.
and I agree with Jim Walton here that we already had a 4-town meeting. We did our job. We worked with the other towns. We came up with a number. We were happy. We extended it a little bit. We compromised upward. And then that went to the regional school committee, didn't accept that. Now they're basically they're out on an island here, basically, as far as I can tell. And I think we have no reason to just assume that we should go up to 8.2%. I think that is irresponsible. I think we should go in with the number we have, as Jim suggested. And then we have to read the tea leaves and see what's going on with Amherst, particularly, and the rest of the towns, and then make a decision about what we're willing to recommend. If that means being flexible and in terms of being a good community member, then we'll figure that out when we get there. But I think to preemptively go up to 8.2% is not logical as far as I'm concerned.
But you won't have the option to do that, Bob, because you can't go up at that point.
Well, I think that's something I'd like to look into and talk to the moderator about, because you know this is a very special circumstance, and we could explain this to the public about what the play is here.
But it'll be his call. If the finance committee won't have control of whether you can do that or not. That's the problem.
Well, I think this is an extraordinary circumstance, so I think maybe we have to deal with it with an extraordinarily different way. Look, I know that Paul raised that issue for the first time in my recollection 2 years ago, when someone wanted to amend a budget item and he said, no, you can't do it because people haven't been properly notified. And
It's
you
happened
know,
a lot.
but you
Yeah.
think that I never recall it ever happening in the past.
It's the rule. It's the rule.
Law, we can't go any other way.
It's the rule. For that reason, I was thinking if we did step 1, there was 3 options. If we put 8.2 in the budget and the finance committee does not recommend it, that says where we're at. And I don't believe, I guess then you're up against whether there's a lot of people that come to the meeting planning to override the finance committee's recommendation. That could happen.
Sure.
But it would directly translate into a tax number for the average tax bill that we would be telling them. But if by putting it in at 8.2 and not recommending it, then it can go down, but you cannot go up. That's the rule. That's what a warrant is for. It warns people.
Jim?
Yeah, I guess I understand that. But again, I guess when I hear that the other three towns are gonna go up 8.2%, that to me sounds, that's speculation. And even if they do end up going that way, I'd like to understand. I'd like to understand what drives them to 8.2%. And I just don't think, based on the information we have right now, we shouldn't drive our decision based on what we speculate the other towns are gonna do. I think we need to focus on where we are. We have a process we've been working with the four towns on. The last time we got together was February. We came to an agreement with them then. We've just gotten some information thrown out there, and I think we just need to have a disciplined process if we're going to go higher than what we've already agreed to with the four towns.
So my only sort of pushback on that, Jim, is that I think that February budget does call for the elimination of 14 teaching positions, which was not, I think one of the mistakes in this process is that I think it was presented at that last four towns meeting as, well, we're not really going to lose 14 teaching positions. There's, like some turnovers, and I don't know, I felt like it was kind of minimized at that meeting. And it wasn't until after that meeting that, the central office did the work of actually planning on, okay, well, what would it mean to make this $1.7 million in cuts? And some of those choices, I think, really are severe. And I think they really would, kind of fundamentally change the quality of education that students. And so while I don't think the 8.2% is a workable number, I guess I would advocate for us to spend some time tonight thinking about what's an amount that kind of can supplement that February budget that we can support and we can live with, and be at least prepared to defend that at a four towns meeting, as opposed to just showing up at the four towns meeting and say, this too bad, we arrived at an agreement in February, and we see no reason to move off of that. Susie?
One of the things is the process is quite flawed. The four town meeting is not represented by the school committee. They are not there talking and advocating and defending. We're only doing basically only a financial end at four town meeting. So we can walk out of that meeting with a picture, but it really doesn't include all the stakeholders.
No, but it does. Susie, the regional school committee is part of the meeting.
They're not all there. They're definitely not all there. And I think that's a problem. And so when April says then later they come up with a full-fledged, full-throated thing, it's because they really aren't very integrated at the four town meetings. So I would say it isn't well represented. And here we are. How can we come up with a budget number that will meet more needs than were represented at the four town meeting?
Jim Walton.
Yeah, I just responded to your comment, AJ, and that's about, going to this April 20 meeting with some idea of where we think we can end up. And I agree and support that. And that's the way we've always handled the process with four town discussions in the past. I guess the challenge for us this time is we already have to be locked into some number prior to, we have to lock in something into the warrant prior to that meeting. That's the challenge.
Yeah,
that's the challenge with that. That's the conundrum.
Right,
Yeah.
and if that number is the $39,000 increase, then I think that's going to kind of guarantee that we're not going to be able to amend the budget at town meeting, because I don't think it's likely that all four towns are going to reject the 8.2% proposed budget, but you know, and go
Yeah.
back to
Yeah.
the 2 point whatever, and at the 4% for Amherst and the other towns. But anyway, so
Yeah, the other comment on it, AJ, is going back to what we came up with in February is Doug had some idea of what needed to be done to get that proposed budget done. He had to, if anybody in that room, in that meeting had some idea, it had to have been Doug. That had some sense for what had to be done to
Yeah.
hit that number.
Right. I mean, I think that's
I don't think Doug would have just pulled that out of the air, those numbers.
Right.
He had to have some idea of what kind of changes had to be made.
right. But I guess my criticism is that I think it was sort of downplayed how significant an impact that, and it's certainly, I mean, it certainly didn't predict, you know, the amount of public pushback that they ultimately received, which was really substantial. And I mean, like, I think if at that meeting it was presented that, well, you know, we're going to have to make these cuts, and for example, we're going to have to make this fundamental change to the middle school language program, I think there might have been some more pushback than there was. But the message at that meeting was, you know, this is workable. We can do this. We can manage this. And I think that was a mistake. No. Bob.
Yeah, I just want to say to comment on Susie's remarks, but I think you're right that the process is flawed. One of the ways it's flawed is that the Regional School Committee hands out the contracts to the teaching staff, which puts a lot of upward pressure on the budget. And then we're left with the dilemma of, could we support this really significantly increased budget or reduce all these other functions of the school, like the cooking program, the home ec program, all these programs were sacrificed in the past few years because of the upward pressure of wages for training, for instruction. And we're not part of that process. We have nothing to do with the contracts for the teachers. And yet we have to deal with it. We have to deal with budgets. We have to deal with financial management. And they are at this four-town meeting to represent, to advocate, and to pitch their budget. And our responsibility is to review it and to see what we can afford to pay, considering all the other obligations that are placed upon us to finance different departments in our towns. So I think the process was reasonably open, and I think that nobody. I've tried to make a couple points at the meeting that, you know, the enrollment has gone down steadily in the region, yet the cost of educating students is up to over $30,000 per each. They have employed choice down there at a rate of 19% of their student body is choice. They get $5,000 for a choice student, $32,000 for a regular homegrown student. This doesn't work. There has to be structural adjustments in the way they operate and provide services to our children and our families that is not as costly and as inefficient as this. So yeah, there'll always be resistance whenever you contract any department, especially something as sensitive and as important as a school. But this is our job to look at this thing and say, that's one of the things that I liked about what Tricky said. Stand back and do it. Let's do a 3-year plan. Where is this headed with enrollment trends, with the cost of education, with all the needs that the buildings have? Look at it all together and say, let's come up with a plan, you know, with a plan that will work. And instead of this ad hoc method that we have. And, you know, we ended up with a car crash because of that method. And I think the politics are, as you say, AJ, they're very intense, and someone's going to take some heat anytime you let a teacher go. But, you know, the cost is just not supportable, I think, at this point. That's the problem, you know. So where this heads, what that means for us is we can't just say, oh yeah, whatever, let's put 10% in there for this as a marker, and then we can always reduce it later. Well, I don't think that's really sound financial management either. So I don't know where we're at. We're right. You're right, April. You're right, Susie, that this process has put us into a real jam, and it's annoying because this should have been worked out between the parties in a more amicable way, it seems to me, you know.
April?
I have to say, I love hearing you say, Bob, that I'm right. I just wanted to say that. That really,
Not
that
the
made my
first time.
day.
Come
It's been a
on.
long day. Thank you.
First
But I
person
wanted
all
to
day,
say-
huh, April?
It's been a long day. It's been a bit, but I want to propose that we end this. I think we're having a wonderful discussion, and I was right. And that we look at the budget. What can we afford? And I would propose that we leave the current 8.2 number in the budget with the understanding that we will not support it. But let's look at the numbers. What can we support? Where? Because I think we also have to go into this meeting with a spirit of compromise. You know, that, and we are the bad guys once again, maybe, but maybe not. So let's do the work.
Okay.
Where are we with the budget?
All right, so yeah, I'm good. I think that's, you're right, maybe we should transition. So let me pull up the budget that Becky sent earlier today. Becky, do you want to just flag anything that's changed since the previous version that we've looked at?
Okay, so the one thing is I added the $15,000 to new growth. Just going based on the last two actuals that we've had, it was 68,000 this year, 56 the year before. This 18,022, I think it's, you know, it happened, but in 21 we were at 92, and in 20 we were at 72, and in 19 we were at 79. So if you all are comfortable with that, I know there's reason to search for a revenue that's going to be there in the end, and I do believe it'll be there, but the assessors are just starting on the new growth figure. They'll probably have it by mid-May, but you know, that's too late for our process.
What was the previous number we had in here?
It was 40,000.
Okay, no, we had it 15. All right.
Okay, and then there was a slight change in the amount of levy capacity. I've only made smaller changes on the expense side. I added in two longevity payments, two $300 longevity payments for FY25. As we look through I had already enlarged the equipment maintenance. That is not new here. There is the longevity bonus for the assessor's clerk.
All right, that's this 300. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a second one for the police chief for her first 5 years. The 300 for this one is for 10 years because it's she's part-time. I believe that's the case. I reduced the amount of the assistant town clerk. I'm sorry, the assistant town collector. And I'm not sure if that's a good decision. I believe that, yeah, because I think it was budgeted at 3,600. The prior year was 918, and the year before that was 1,345. So I brought that down another $1,100. Let's see if you want to. I tried to highlight anything I changed.
That's helpful.
So I added 1,500 to the planning board expenses because this year they were running over. They currently are running over, and they ran over the year before in FY23. Well, they're approaching, you know, they are over. So I did those two changes. The equipment maintenance had been done earlier. The town news, okay, the town report had been at 1130, but what we paid last year was 1950 to get the work done. And so I put, for next year, I put in the figure that we actually paid. You can see the actual in FY23 with printing was $6,000. So I think that's a reasonable adjustment. It does not include the printing costs. I hope to steal the printing money from the printing and advertising line up above. Okay, and then, I'm sorry, and I also, I added 420 to the newsletter line, just given the fact that the cost to do a newsletter times 3 was not covered in the 3,780. There's the longevity payment for the police chief. Here, I haven't made these changes. I did in the, we just talked about adding $3,000 here. That's not reflected in this budget that you're looking at, but I made the change, I'm making the change on the master.
So that's
If you want to go to the next page. And this had been done prior. There was an extra $121 for the emergency notification system that we use. Veterans benefits, I think is the last change I made. We actually have a veteran drawing monthly that has started back up. So I projected what it'll cost for next year at the rate that we know is being currently charged. So it's an additional $1,301. And if you want to,
Becky, it looks like you did, so you did put in the 8.2% regional assessment.
Yeah, you did.
figure.
yes, I did.
Becky, quick question. You didn't mention 2 positions that the personnel board had discussed?
Oh, we're talking about highway, I'm sorry,
No.
and cemetery groundskeeper. Oh, no,
No.
the ones that we were,
The alignment study.
you're right. I don't think those are reflected, but did they change the budget? Yes, they will
Yeah,
change the
I think
treasury.
they would. I think there might have been enough money in the assessor's clerk line, but I wasn't sure that there was enough money, and there's definitely not enough money in the treasurer.
Okay, so there are 2 alignments that need to get added to this budget, and I think their total was about 4,000, 5,000.
It was 5,000. I mean, it was a 5,000 increase, but 2,000 something is already in here of that 5,000 because the COLA. So I think the net effect was more like 3,000. I can look it up for you, but
Yeah.
But they do need to be in there.
Treasurer.
Just for everybody's information, we did an alignment study. We compared salaries. We do it every 3 years. Franklin County and local towns versus our town, and there were 2 positions that were more than 10% below market. And so we decided for those 2 positions that a rate adjust. We didn't go up to bring them up to market, but we came up with a number that brought them back closer to market. So that's what we're referring to. That's my personnel board report for today.
So we'll have an additional $3,000. But it's worst case, like I've been telling you, I put in the worst case. We have the 127,000 for the regional assessment. Thank you for highlighting that, AJ. I don't know if you go down, there might be a couple more.
Looked like that was the last one.
I thought it was. Oh, good.
The last page here. So this, if I've been keeping track correctly, this bottom line here just is the only thing it doesn't reflect is the $3,100 that we added in training wages tonight, and the $3,000 for this personnel board alignment study, whatever the effects of that. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so
I'm gonna go.
So Becky, this gap is $40,910. So it's actually more like 40.
No, that's just between, okay, that is, I'm not sure what you're trying to do with that,
Oh,
but
yeah,
that's
yeah, sorry.
It's
Yeah,
not relevant.
this year.
Yeah.
There currently is a $40,000 gap with the real things that happened. I mean, with the budget changes, that's not, the 40,000 is not what you want to look
all
at.
right, I got you. Yeah, yeah, okay. So does this value here, does this utilize any of our, or how much of our excess? levy capacity?
115,000,
100
More now, right? 121,000.
121 now, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's what the gap's made up, because
Yeah.
it has to come from somewhere.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so that's about 121,000. Okay,
Let me just double check, because at one point I played with, okay, I took it back out. Go back, please go back to the revenue side. I mean, this is where if we were on the second page down farther, AJ, please. Okay, total revenues. So this is where we would decide if we okay, so we are right here. I have 30,000 as part of this budget, and I have $10,000 in the budget for the building renovations. But I put 30,000 here, and I'm sorry I didn't highlight it, but there was conversation about approaching it that way, and that was the approach I made. We did.
You put 40,000 in the expense budget and you have this 30 in revenue. So the net effect is 10,000.
Appropriated and 30,000 from free cash.
40,000 appropriated, but 30,000 of it is going to be paid for by free cash. The other 10,000 will come from the tax levy. And then next year we'll shift so more comes out of the tax levy, right?
Yeah, take a gradual approach.
So the number 5.38% is really low. It's going to be something closer to 6%. Is that right? By the time we add these figures in that you just brought up, these other increases.
There's only
30,
6,000 of
5.
increases, right?
But on top of what we already had built into the budget with the excess levy capacity, there'll be more. So,
Well,
see, I don't know how the rest of the committee feels about a 6% increase.
Susie's hand is up.
Yeah,
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
so
Yes,
we
go ahead,
didn't
Susan.
do the cap X discussion because I believe that there is an argument to be made of some free cash being used in this budget that would lower the that would raise the revenue. Because we only have one of the free cash discussions there.
That would lower the excess levy capacity.
It would,
yes.
yeah, it would lower the need to tax in this budget. So
If I may speak for a moment, I think the problem is if you're going up this kind of increases and we're offsetting some of the increases with reserves, okay, that's going to lessen the impact on the taxpayer this year. But a lot of these things that are being funded by reserves are actually going to be continuing expenses.
it
So
depends on that discussion. We haven't had that discussion.
well, we just discussed a couple of them right now. We discussed moving more of the building expenses into the operating budget as time went on. We've seen the school, which is now up, got over 5% increase, which is going to be permanently part of our budget. That's not temporary. We're going to put some more cash into the road repair program to help Steve do the roads, but that's really can't be seen as anything but a kind of a continuing operating expense to keep our roads in shape. So, I mean, I'm concerned that we're raising taxes this much when we have a policy of level services, where, I don't know why we can't budget. We're sort of going backwards here. We're just accepting the requests more or less intact, and we're not concerned with that number of the increase. I'm concerned by it. I think it's too high. I don't think it's reasonable for us to raise taxes that much.
Susie?
Yes, I feel like that is your listing of things, Bob, isn't a complete enough and a round enough discussion. I believe that we need to talk about the CapEx spending, and I have some rationales and some proposals.
Okay. George?
Yeah, I think it is reasonable to use some free cash, especially some of that sped cost in the elementary school is not forever cost. And ramping new costs into the budget, which there are quite a few, by funding portions of them with free cash creates less of a jolt to the tax rate. These are things that we've approved and we put in the budget. So clearly they're going to be in there in the long run, but we don't necessarily need to hit the taxpayers with the full effect in the first year. So I'm okay with lowering that excess levy capacity number to some extent by looking at what those new items are and to what extent are we comfortable using cash? Because like we saw with the building repair line, I think it is reasonable to take a portion of the out of district placement that we know is not going to remain in the budget forever. And so I want to have that conversation.
By the way, George, I agree with the idea of spend money coming out of cash because I don't know how long this is going to last, but I do think that could be seen as a temporary expense.
All right, so should we, I'm gonna pull up the CapEx funding table now. And let's discuss that. Let's see, where is that?
And AJ, when you get it up, one thing I want to mention is
Yeah.
on the schedule is on the budget, we're adding $86,000 to 86. I forget the number, Becky, maybe you know. 86, I'll get it.
You're talking about the
86,000,
$86,214.
right. That's going to be a transfer to the capital stabilization from the operating budget. So you want to include that in the analysis, AJ.
So, sorry, explain to me again where that's coming from, that 86,000? That's,
So in our operating budget, to the extent that we don't have debt service, we have a transfer line that
yes,
the operating budget funds capital stabilization account. So on line 22, you want to put in transfer to capital stabilization. And then you want to go to the capital stabilization line and you want to put in the 86,214.
okay.
Right. And so now what happens is you look at the bottom, you can see under ATM, we're going to be raising the capital stabilization. It'll be at 213 if that, if the budget is approved.
Got it. Okay. All right. All right. So, so how do we want to do this? Do we want to go sort of project by project and make a proposal? I mean, I think Susie, you said you were prepared to propose some things tonight, but I'm assuming that's about injecting free cash to fund portions of the operating budget. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
well, I think that we sort of have the whole discussion, but I do want to bring up
Yeah.
the out of district placement, and I want to suggest that some of it come out of the FinCom reserve as it was initially intended, and the rest of it come out of free cash because it's not a permanent feature of
Okay.
our operating budget. That's one I wanted to bring up.
All right. So just maybe let's tackle some of these smaller ones first, because I think those are the kinds of things we've tended to recommend funding through free cash. So things like, $12,000 for body camera. Would there be any sort of pushback on using free cash to fund that project, assuming it passes?
Free cash.
Okay. $4,500 for a storage container for the highway department. Is that reasonable? All right.
Yep.
$25,000 for highway department generator.
Yep.
That number is short the tank.
Yeah, we don't.
About 1,000.
It doesn't include the
3,000 more, Becky?
I think that the total number was like 22,000. It's close, but I think it's $1,000 short.
Okay.
I'll get that number for the next meeting.
All right, I'm gonna just leave it at 25 for now, but we can revise that next meeting. Okay. And then $12,000 for gravel road repair.
Well, I have a question about that.
Please go ahead.
So what's the future of that line? Is that something we want to build into the budget, or was that something that's going to fluctuate year to year and become a regular capital expense or an occasional capital expense? What's the future of that?
So just to kind of remind everybody, this was originally proposed by Steve to be an increase in his operating budget, and we recommended as a committee to him to bring this to the capital planning committee. And I think the logic behind that was that this is that there's been sort of like and Bob, you should correct anything I'm misstating here, but the sense I got was that we've been kind of experiencing or facing a lot of kind of deferred maintenance on our gravel roads, and that there was kind of a need identified by him to do some shoring up of some of our roads, and that while this is not something that's going to be, we're not going to solve this problem in a single year. I didn't get the sense that this is like a permanent.
Okay.
I think it
thing
could
that
be,
needs to be. You think it could be? You're saying?
yes.
'Cause
Originally, he
my
asked for,
yeah. Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead, George.
I was gonna say, he originally asked for 28,000 and came back and said, I'd like a $40,000 operating budget for this line. So the question is he gonna go back to 28, or, and my recollection was he was wanting this for the long run. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I believe that's true. I think the amount of material that was being put down was insufficient over the last decade.
Mhm.
It's not, he's talking about this 12,000 repairing 100, the most high priority small sections of road. But to fully develop out the whole road, it's gonna take a number of years, especially with, the limited manpower.
Right.
So
And
to
the
that
costs go up during the same period.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me just say how I thought of it conceptually. He said that the roads have been dressed with gravel from the budget every year, and they're dressed on the surface and graded. But that process, sometimes not enough material was put on, and they're down to the backbone of the road, and they need to rebuild that section of the backbone, which has been now disturbed by the drivers, by the vehicles, by the grader. And so he sees this, and I think this is an okay conceptual thing for me. If he makes a proposal to us on a year-to-year basis through capital planning, he's going to do some work on Leonard Road. He's going to rebuild a section that's soft and it's down to its backbone, and then use this heavy bony material as a base, and then it'll be part of his general maintenance budget to dress that and grade it on a year-to-year basis. Then I think it works for a capital expense, and so I think he agreed that he would handle it that way this year. So I may be contradicting myself now, but I think that's a reasonable proposal. I think that he needs to do some structural work on some of the dirt roads, and that could be considered to be a capital expense. And I think as long as he identifies it and tells us what it's going to cost him in a given year, what he has time to do, and what the cost of the material is, then I think we could address it as a capital expense, and I support that line this year for that reason. Does that
Well,
make
then-
it clear?
Clear to me.
Yeah.
But I just want to point out that we've got $40,000 in the operating budget. And so if we're going to treat it as a capital item, I think we should have $28,000 in the cap.
Absolutely, that's what we did this for, right?
Yeah, so I think we got a pickup in the operating budget of $12,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
You're
needed
right.
it.
I didn't realize that. You're right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, George.
Sure.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. Line 126, gravel road maintenance. Okay, so that's going back to 28K. And then I'm assuming we'll recommend a free cash transfer for this one. Nope. Susie.
I think that we should be considering it in, say, capital stabilization or stabilization. We might need to prepare the town, and not this year, because this year's too tough, that the town pass a designated fund
Mhm.
towards this 12,000. And I would guess capital stabilization is the right place to put it. So maybe we wing it this year, but I think we need to prepare the town for an ongoing project that's like 12,000 a year And let Steve figure out if that's gonna be sufficient. There's also some, there was extra money that came in from the state in highways, and we hear it being studied, so it may end up matching up to some kind of state thing. But right now, I believe the town should put it under capital stabilization with the goal of making it a regular expense.
Okay. Any other thoughts about that? Any reactions to that? Does that sound like,
Seems reasonable.
yeah. I don't feel like I have a strong opinion either way, but all right, so let's for now, let's put this in.
Is it true that the cap stabilization money is to be passed by 2/3? That's the only difference, right?
There was a lot.
Bob, there's a law in the books. I don't know if the legislators have passed it yet to remove the 2/3 restriction on stabilization and make it a majority vote.
I don't think that it would have trouble passing in any case, but I
Right.
just raised that
Let's
issue.
do it.
All right. So we've got to fund about a little under $26,000 of this elementary school painting and exterior repairs project. And so does anybody have a proposal for where that money would come from?
Sure. AJ, where did the other 137,000, it's under other?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
this
where is that being, how is that being funded?
So this is the remaining balance of that earmark,
For the roof.
those earmark funds that we had received originally that we used for the roof project.
Okay,
We didn't spend
Okay.
all of that, so we have that amount left, and we're gonna proposing to apply that to this other school project.
okay, thanks.
So what we need is this $25,860.
Are you indicating on this spreadsheet that that's going to be borrowed, we're going to borrow that?
No, he's
No.
just putting it.
It stays.
That's
there
the other
until-
column.
Okay.
Yeah, until
It's already funded.
Yeah, until we make a decision now. So, where do we propose? Which reserve fund do we propose?
How about free cash?
Any other strong opinions about this?
You know, I think free cash for all of it, really, but
Sure.
except,
That should be 30.
well, actually, I don't even think this needs to be here. What we do is
Yeah.
we put at the bottom on row 23, we put in an amount that is on the revenue page for cash flow use. Becky had 30,000 there.
Yeah.
So we should be putting 30 there. And then this 40 shouldn't be on the schedule because that's being funded by the operating line.
Right.
And because right now, the way it is, we're taking 80,000 out of free cash.
Okay, so this is
Double counting it.
so I'm a little confused by why we're the decision to present this on the operating budget as opposed to how we're treating all of these other capital projects. Can
Because
somebody-
it's appropriated.
okay,
And it's going to be ongoing, right?
Yeah, it's built into the budget, AJ.
okay,
That's why.
all right.
Delete that.
So I think we delete this row and then we go down to row 23 and we change the 40 to the 30 that we currently have on the revenue. And if we decide to add other things like we talked about, we'll need to change that 30,000 to whatever we end up deciding. That shows how much free cash is really being used. AJ, actually, I think I can't see the column headings, but I think you need to put it in the free cash column but leave it there, but also put it in the free cash column.
Right, the cost.
Oh,
is-
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So we can see the decrease. Yep.
Yep. Got it. Yeah, that changes this number here. Okay.
And now we're talking about the ODD,
Well-
other district one. That
Well,
would
we're still
be in line 22, right?
Right, but before we get there, should we?
Or
we should
anything
talk
else
about-
for that matter.
We should talk about this cruiser, right?
Oh, sorry.
We've got a $70,000.
Should that be raised to the actual number that the chief gave us?
7504, was it?
Oh, I thought it was like
Well,
70,288.
Let me just say, I looked into that
Yeah, please, Bob.
and the original ask was 470. That was on her application to the capital planning committee. but then she came up with this pickup truck and it costs more money. Surprise, it costs more money for a pickup truck than it does an SUV.
So what's the number that
I think it's 75,000, right, Becky?
No.
No,
70,588. I got it.
70,500 and something, I thought.
yes.
88, 70,588. I wrote it down from the last meeting.
Right,
Okay,
on the minutes.
yeah. So
Thank
the
you.
only, I don't think this is a problem, but the only sort of, the reason I had it at
Capital plan
70,000
didn't vote 588.
is that's what capital planning
Right.
ended up voting on was 70,000. I don't think that's.
Okay.
It's close enough. Okay, so what are some thoughts about how we fund that project? George?
Well, I'm looking down at the bottom free cash line and it looks like free cash. AJ, would you mind clicking on the 13,000, the 13% and telling me what the numerator is in that or the denominator is in that?
The
Yeah, click on that.
numerator is F32, so
And the denominator is a fixed number, right?
yeah, it's 7200, so 7 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's close to our budget. So what we're looking at is free cash after all these transactions would be 13%. And I'm okay with going a little lower, so I would be fine with putting 7588 in free cash. And keeping our stabilization accounts because we got big debt service coming up, and I'm wondering if we're gonna be able to use our stabilization in FY26 fiscal year budgeting for some of those big capital items. Becky, is now an okay time to talk about, we haven't talked about the debt service in the operating budget, but it's a very low interest rate number. It doesn't have any of those capital items that we approved. So the debt service for all those is coming.
Okay, but so the conversation the treasurer Ryan had with Lynn, our trust advisor, our loan advisor, was that she believes interest rates by next year are going to be quite a bit lower than they currently are. And the reason the interest is so low is she's recommending we pay interest only this year and go out to bond next year. Because it'll have a significant, it'll be a significant savings in interest.
So if that's the case, I'm wondering if in a year from now, one of those three items, and I know at town meeting, we approved financing them through debt, but I'm wondering if in next year, when we're going through this process, if we might have the opportunity to take one of those items and use capital stabilization to pay it down and lower our debt service in our operating budget.
Favor of that.
That's a possibility.
So preserving some of this capital stabilization and stabilization could be very beneficial to us in that regard. That's kind of thinking ahead a year. So again, another reason why I think I'd be fine with $70,000, $70,006 for the
Sounds good to me.
truck and cash, free cash.
All right, any objections to pulling that from our free cash reserves?
Can you put it in so we can see what the percentage of free cash the budget would be? Yeah, thank you.
Push it to 12.
A lot.
We'll have a special town meeting and we'll be spending it. The last 2 years we did.
That's true. Okay. So before we talk about any additional reserves we would want to use to fund the operating budget, are there any concerns about these assumptions that I've made for these, what is it, 6 projects? 7, 6? Yeah. All right, I don't see any hands, so I think we're in good shape there. So I think next we should talk about, any proposals that members want to make about additional using reserves for any other aspects of our budget. And do you guys mind if I'm going to stop sharing the budget here so I have kind of full access to all of your faces. All right, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to ask, I'm going to look into this idea of funding special education expenses from our reserves and how that would work and what the conceptual framework for that is. Maybe Susie or George could talk about that. I think that that's an interesting idea. But it's the school budget, it's part of the school budget. So how does this all gonna work conceptually? How do you see that?
Wait, are you referring to the out of district placement?
Out of district costs, yeah.
Right, okay. So Susie, it sounds like you've done some thinking about this. Do you want to respond? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we can view it as not a permanent part of their operating budget. And for that reason, I feel like it should not be, we should put in some reserve cash to pay it off. And so it helps meet the school budget by some cash reserves, not all from the levy. And it can be, I actually believe we should use cash reserves both from the FinCom reserve and from the free cash.
And we're
And
talking about 25 now, right, next year.
Yeah, for the budget, yes.
so wait, so before we kind of dissect this, what was the George, you would come up with a number that represented both the tuition and the transportation cost. Do we have that handy or?
I could look it up, but it's roughly $90,000. It was 92. I have it in a spreadsheet somewhere. I can get it.
All right. George, your hand is up. Did you want to?
Yeah, I do. Well, yeah, I mean, to some, there's crossover between what I'm thinking with Susie, and I wanted to ask her a question. This is coming up right now. It's $90,250. 58,000 is the out of I guess the education cost, and transportation was 32,250. Came out to 90,250. So the way I was looking at it was, we have 90,250. I'm going to call it 90,000. We have 30 something. I'm going to call it 30 in money coming in from the state for the circuit breaker. So we got a $60,000 additional increase to the school budget, which we're going to fund. We're going to leave it in the school budget. It's in the operating budget. But to me, funding a portion of that with cash makes sense because it will drop out at some point. What portion? I'm thinking 50%. 50% would be 30,000. But we can debate that as a committee. But I also want to ask, so that's the way I envision it working mechanically, if you will, conceptually, if you will, in the budget that we present to the town. But Susie's adding another dimension. And so I want to ask, how does that work? Are you saying increase FinCom reserve number, or dig into the FinCom reserve number and take away some amount right off the top?
I'm saying dig into it because initially we were at 40 and we bumped it up to 70, 75 because of anticipating sped costs that could be met through that. And I think we should hold to that. And I think we would sort of view our FinCom reserve a little differently if we allocate some for this sped cost.
Well, just to finish the thought and the question, while I got the floor, that's not a bad idea. I would just say that, think about how much we feel comfortable going in. We built that $75,000 number quite a long time ago, and inflation probably should make that number a little higher. So I would just like to take that.
I think that if the FinCom reserve has been used since I've been on the committee for emergencies and things, shortfalls like we just discussed with Lenny. And I think that, really, if we don't spend the whole reserve, it goes back into free cash anyway. So isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So what we're taking Peter to pay Paul here. So let's just pay it out of the FinCom reserve. I mean, out of the free cash account. And I would actually support paying more because this is an extraordinary expense. It's not an operating expense, really, even though it's part of their budget. I think that if we're getting 30 from the circuit breaker, why not fund the rest of it with free cash and take the pressure off their budget for something which is not really related to education per se. It's a mandated expense that they have to undertake, but I think we can afford to help them with that with our cash reserves.
So you're suggesting using
More than
$60,000 of free cash?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, like 50 or something. I would support that. I think that that's reasonable.
All right. So we've got a couple proposals here. George is 30. Yeah, Becky?
Okay, so if you have to sustain this for multiple years, which you know,
Which we will. We
you're
know that.
creating
we
a,
were- We were led to that impression.
it's a
It's 3
structural
years.
deficit that you're creating.
This is
So
3-year, Becky, this is for 3 years.
3 more years.
Right,
This year was the first.
right.
Yes.
No.
So I'm just saying it's, you know, not knowing where your free cash is gonna go.
Yeah, but Becky, we don't want to put it as a part of their budget, of their base budget, because really it's not education. It's a requirement we, the town, have to satisfy to, you know, because of the rules that exist, which are fine. But I don't think that it has anything to do with their services of education.
My
It's not a
concern,
district.
Bob, is that in the next 2 years, there's gonna be a great deal of capital coming on.
Yeah.
You've got your dump truck, your backhoe, the library is gonna be debt excluded, so that'll just dump on top.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be hitting a time where, you know, like Georgia was suggesting, maybe we can get rid of one of those to try to reduce that. I'm just concerned about how it's going to impact the reserves, and if we're not going to have the same margins on health insurance this year. We have the luxury of not increasing the health insurance line because we had a balance, but this coming year with the 9% increases, we're not going to have any buffer from there, which it has been over, you know, 60,000 in the past. So we're losing free cash generation. I just some thoughts.
Yeah, I
think
hear
it's
you.
also good too, Bob.
I still think we can afford to do this, and I would support doing this for 50,000 this year. And I think that really it's reasonable. I understand your point, but we can shift down the road, but you know, we can do it for this year. That just commits us for 1 year.
Yep, and it's always just a 1-year vote.
I know.
Susie, I want to make sure, I feel like I didn't quite present your proposal here. So you had suggested what amount from free cash? From
I would-
FinCom reserves and what?
I think we would do 20 from FinCom reserve. And the rest could either be free cash or leave it in the operating budget.
Susie, when you say the rest, what number do you mean?
Starting at 90, taking out the 30 circuit breaker, that leaves 60, 20 from FinCom reserve and 40 from, was I up to 40?
Yep.
Yep, 40 from free cash.
40 from free cash. All right. So just one thing, I've been keeping track of this. Our excess levy capacity started at 115. If we add 6,300, it comes up to 121,679. If we subtract 12,000 because it's in the operating budget, it shouldn't be there, and we subtract 40,000 because and we fund with 40,000 from free cash for the out district, and then we follow what Susie said, 20,000. We lower FinCom reserve by 20,000. We keep the school budget the way it is. That's going to bring our excess levy capacity usage to 49,679. Call it $50,000. That's where we would be right now, and that is including, of course, an 8.2% increase in region. Just to update everybody.
Got it. Thanks.
Getting better, George.
Yeah, 50,000. I'd like, you know, that's better than 115.
All right. So I'm wondering if somebody wants to make a motion on related to this, because I feel like we've got about 3 different proposals. I think they all sound
Hey, Jack,
reasonable, but yeah, we've got to go.
Can I just ask a
Becky?
question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So in total, how much free cash Are
So-
we talking about for education, it's 60? No, 40?
Or 40. Well, it depends on whose proposal you use.
Yeah, so Susie's proposal is 40 from free cash. George's was 30. Bob's was 50. So
All right, so there we are. I'm gonna make a motion.
go for it.
Just give me 1 second. I'm gonna make a motion that we transfer from free cash $40,000 for the purpose for the purpose of subsidizing the out-of-district placement in the elementary school.
We'll second that. It's a good compromise.
Any further discussion about that? Okay, George,
Run outside.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, I.
Cashew, aye.
Mosher, aye.
Stein, aye.
Walton, I.
So this number is now 70,000. George, do you usually itemize this when you've done this before, like where you?
It usually was always one item, but yeah, that's probably wise. You only have two, so you might as well.
Yeah, so.
Operating budget, out of this, and then operating budget, building repairs.
And in the wording, we would just say for state mandated services.
Right,
Sounds good.
right.
Very nice.
So I'm wondering if we're at a point where we can sort of, I don't know what to say, but it's almost 9 o'clock, and maybe we could sort of take where we're at and pick this up next Tuesday when we have another meeting.
Is our next
Yeah,
meeting next
I
Tuesday?
I agree
Bob
with that.
agrees.
I
Is
agree
our
with
next
that. I have
meeting
a
next-
hard stop. I have a hard stop at 9 o'clock. I have to go on at 9.
Our next meeting is, let's see,
Tuesday, isn't it?
yeah, it is.
I thought we were gonna meet on the 9th.
But that's the
Um,
2nd, April 2nd.
I know, for some reason, I thought we were meeting on the 9th.
We probably are.
I think.
I
if you-
think are we meeting on the 9th to go over the warrant articles with the
So this is what,
select board?
yeah, so this is, here, let me pull up our.
Yes.
I think, didn't we put
Yes,
another
that's right,
Wednesday?
Phoebe, that's right, George. That's with the select board. You are meeting on the 9th.
So April 2nd, we had said we would approve our
Oh, okay.
final budget. And then April 9th, we would meet this with the select board to approve the warrant articles. Bob?
I just want to tell the committee that I planned a trip to Sicily, and I'm going to be out of here on the 15th, miss town meeting, and be back on the 4th of May. So I didn't think town meeting would be this exciting. I didn't anticipate. I thought we'd have our business all wrapped up before I left. And it was appropriate for me to leave on tax day on April 15th. So I won't be around for that hearing and for the town meeting, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I just thought I'd let everybody know that it's going to be basking in the Sicilian sun.
Oh,
Sounds
so
nice.
You could probably
sorry.
zoom in. You could probably zoom in.
That's awesome.
Yeah, all you gotta do is get up at 3 in the morning or
Yeah.
some crazy number.
Where's
Yeah.
your commitment?
I tried to plot it out carefully, but I didn't understand that the events sort of get out of control.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Okay, so actually, while we're talking about schedule, I'm gonna be in Arizona on the 15th, and so that's actually not a great day for me. But it kind of is what it is. But I will be back on, I think, the 18th, so I should be able to attend the Four Towns meeting.
And while we're
We
talking
don't
about-
have an agenda item for the 15th, is that right?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
just kind of, we had it as a hold. Yeah,
Hold it.
yeah,
Maybe the report people will start working on the report.
yeah, right. I mean, there may be some set of tasks that you guys can do without me at that meeting. But yeah, so are folks comfortable? I mean, we are like, if we sort of stop and kind of pause our process right now and pick it up on April 2nd, George?
I think we're close to done.
Yeah,
Honestly, I don't know what else there is to talk about other than what do we want to do with the line for the regional school?
yeah. I
Because
think-
we know that we're using 50,000 of excess levy capacity at the full 8.2% increase. How much levy capacity do we really want to use? I think is the only question, really.
Yeah, I think there's that question, and then I think, you know, our practice in the past has been to sort of give members an opportunity to make any sort of comments on any aspects of the budget and, you know, propose any votes. So I think we can do all of that on the 2nd.
I think
But,
it's helpful to have the tax rate impact figured out.
I'm
'Cause
working on that right now. I'm almost done,
okay,
but I'll get that out to you.
okay.
So right
Oops.
now, what I'm showing, no, wait, I don't have the 40 subtracted yet. We were at $18.70, which would have been an average, on the average tax bill, $6,425, which is an increase over this year of $306. That's where we were. We've brought that down and I'm working on the new number.
Okay, maybe we can have that on April 2nd. That'd be great.
Yeah, and I would add to that, not only the tax rate, but also our estimate of the single family home tax bill.
Yes, that's all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all tied together. I know. I
Estimate of
just,
what?
And we are tying it to all the tax rates I'm doing, the cost, I'm sorry, the tax amounts are based on George, a long sought after figure for the FY24 single family tax, single family value of $343,570.
yeah, that's what the state's reporting.
I
And,
feel less average all the time.
and while my hand's up, the one other thing I was going to say that I forgot. Oh, yes. I'm going to start the annual report. So Becky, I'm going to ask you, as soon as you're done, could you send me the Excel versions of the budgets? So
Yep.
I can start doing some of the calculating.
And
Sooner is always better, but you know, I'd like to have a draft of it for everybody on Tuesday, which is a kind of a tight schedule, but I'll certainly give it a go. And one thing I've been thinking about doing differently on that from what we've done in other years. I mean, everything else is boilerplate. It's just changing the numbers for the current budget. But is this the year we want to have a paragraph or two at the beginning to kind of summarize what's going on? AJ, is something to think about.
Yeah,
You know, I think a lot of towns, I was looking at Pelham's budgets after I had a conversation with John.
Mhm.
And, you know, they have a long I think they talk too much, honestly, but you know, every town's got a unique culture, but
Yeah.
I think it would be good to kind of lay out what everybody's about to see and how we got to it.
Yeah, I think
A
it's
bit of a
good.
challenge.
All right, great. And okay, so let's adjourn for tonight then, and we'll follow up on April 2nd. And I hope to have spoken with Doug Slaughter before then, and I think if I'm not mistaken, we'll have some information about what the Amherst FinCom discussed relative to the regional school budget.
That
I
would be
think-
great.
And fixing the assessment or making
Yeah.
sure the assessment method is correct.
Yes,
Yeah,
That's a
Motion
big
to
one.
adjourn?
Second.
using the dollar amount that they approve in the formula.
Right.
all right. So George, you want to vote?
Arvanitis, aye.
Rose, aye.
Everywhere I.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Bye.
Walton, aye.
Bye.
Right.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Yep.
Good night
Adios.
all.
Good night.
night.
Have a good one.
Go Celtics. Somebody had to say it.